All right, so now let's talk about one of the most straightforward ways that we can assess performance, and that is by just measuring straight results. So in many jobs, not all jobs, but some jobs, we have really good objective, measurable results that we can just look at. Sales is the best example. So most salespeople, this is how their performance is evaluated. They have a sales goal. Did they meet the sales goal? Were they above it? Were they below it? Sometimes it's about managing costs. Sometimes there are productivity numbers that we can get for certain jobs. Sometimes it's output. How many things did you make? How many things did you create? But there are a lot of jobs where you don't have that kind of data. And in jobs where we don't necessarily have direct something we can count, something we can point to, management by objectives is a very common way that we try to look at results and measure results for our performance management system. So the way that a management by objective performance management system would work is the organization sets goals, as we said, and based on those goals, each department has goals, and within the department, each individual should have some goals that relate to the organization's goals. Now, depending on the department, some of these are more straightforward than others. So if it is, a manufacturing company, the manufacturing goals are pretty straightforward, and you can break it down and get it down to maybe individual departments or teams or functions or even employees. Sometimes departments that are more that support the organization in doing their job, like human resources, there are some objective goals that we come up with, like hiring a certain number of people, but when it comes to things like making sure the performance appraisal system is working properly, making sure people are trained, those are a little more fluid in terms of coming up with a perfect linkage to the overall. If we know that we need to increase diversity, it's a looser linkage to the overall goals of the organization to increase manufacturing or to manufacture 1 million cars this year. But we would still have clear objectives around that goal. So managers and employees work together to set goals based on what the department's trying to do, which is based on what the organization is trying to do. Those goals should be specific. They should be stretch goals. That's one of the tricky things about performance management. There's a story about asking someone told me the story about this is how to think about performance management and setting goals in managing by objectives. Imagine there's a lumberjack, and you say to that lumberjack, how many trees can you cut down in the next month? And the lumberjack, feels very proud of himself, and he really wants to do great. And he's like, I can cut down 100 trees in the next month. And then the boss says, awesome, I'm going to tie your pay to cutting down trees. So if you cut down 100 trees, you're going to get this raise. If you cut down 150 trees, I'm going to give you even a bigger raise. And if you don't cut down 100 trees, then you're not going to get a raise at all. And so then the lumberjack says, actually, I can cut down 50 trees. So it is difficult to set these goals because we have we have dual purposes. One, we want to achieve. People naturally like to set big goals and achieve big goals. But then when we tie it to pay, we don't want to set it so that if something goes wrong, I'm not going to get my bonus this year, or I'm not going to get a raise this year because I set the goal too high. So I might want to set it a little lower so I know for sure I'll get that bonus. So that's one of those difficult things to manage in performance management, specifically in managing by objectives. But point is, in an ideal world, we have very specific, challenging, and objective goals. Then we monitor our progress towards those goals. The manager is giving feedback throughout. And then at the end of the year, when it's time to say whether you get a bonus or whether you get a raise or whatever's tied to your performance appraisal, we look at that objective. Did you meet it? Did you exceed it? And you get a raise based on that. And this works well, like I said, for jobs. Like most of the jobs I've had in my career have never had, the only job I ever had that had real numbers was when I was a consultant. We had billable hours, and so we had a number that we were tied to. But once I went into corporate and did corporate HR and corporate marketing, it was a very project-based goals. It was, design and complete an employee satisfaction survey this year. Did you do it? Did you not? And how well did you do it? Those were objectives. So those were the types of objectives that would have been in my performance appraisal for the year, and what my boss would sit down with me during the year and at the end of the year to say, you accomplished it in a way that was better than we expected, or it didn't work out the way expected, or whatever. So that's management by objectives. In general, employees like that kind of a system because it feels very objective. It's not my boss. I didn't feel like it had to do with whether my boss liked me or didn't like me. It was just, did I do the thing or not? How well did it go? Did I, achieve it? So both managers and employees like this. It's also easy to link it to the organization's goals as a whole. So my example that I just used, I did actually have to design and implement an employee satisfaction survey because our organization strategy was that if we had satisfied employees, they were going to deliver better customer service to our customers, who ultimately would deliver our customers in this case were the hotel employees. So by keeping the employees in corporate satisfied, they serviced employees in hotels better, who then serviced hotel guests better. And by having happy guests, obviously that was the ultimate goal. So I could understand how what I was doing tied directly to the organization's goal of making people in hotels happy. And that is a great system. That's exactly what you want out of your performance management system, is people to be able to draw that line to this, what I'm doing impacts my company in some way. The downside, however, because there is no perfect performance management system. I hope you're gathering this, and we'll continue to pick up on this as we go. This is one of the most challenging topics in HR. I spent a lot of my career designing performance management systems for different companies, and as a general rule, everyone hates performance management. No one's happy with their system because there is no perfect system. One of the big reasons why there is no perfect system is because people are not perfect. People are not, they're not things that we can put on an assembly line and make work. We've always got all these different dynamics with people and their performance and their relationships with their boss and their relationships with each other. So there is no perfect system in management by objectives, even though all those things I just listed that make it a really nice system that people like. Sometimes our performance is outside of our control. Like I just said, people are tricky. My boss may hate me. My coworkers may be difficult. I couldn't get something done because that department wouldn't help. Employees will, when we give you an employee objective and we say your performance, your raise, your bonus is going to be based on hitting this number, that's all they focus on. So if in a situation where I said sales, I've got an objective sales number, you hit this sales number and you will get a bonus. Employees are going to be very, very focused on hitting that sales number, and maybe not care so much about things like customer service or how good a team player they are. how much their employees or their coworkers enjoy working with them. That's not really important. It's not being measured. It doesn't drive my bonus. I don't care. So that is the downside of these objectives. The only things people care about are what we're measuring. So we have to be very careful to measure things that we want employees to do. And at the end of the day, if I say you achieved this goal or you didn't achieve this goal, it doesn't give me a lot of direction on how to improve. And we would like our performance management system to be able to give us developmental information. So if all we know about Tanya is she hits her goals every year, I don't know how she can grow to the next job. What does she need to grow in? We don't know. So those are the different ways. Let's go back in the slideshow just to make sure that you see that we covered all of them. Goodness, right here. We compared employees to each other. We rated individuals on their attributes, which we said is the most common way that performance appraisals are done in organizations. We rated employee behaviors, and we rated their outcomes or results. So now in the next slides, we're going to talk about those raters themselves, because that's an important piece of performance management as well.